Hey guys, okay, I am back with another video. So I want to thank you all for watching and tuning in. As you all can see, my hair is back to curly. I'm done with the straight for the next for now anyway. I'll have to get it back straight in 3 months so I can get a trim, but this is how I normally wear it, just kind of in a protective style, and then I'll probably take it down here in a week and wear it big for a little while and then get it retwisted. But anyway, so I wanted to talk to you all today about nursing burnout. And I've been going back and forth about what topics I want to discuss for the last few days now. But what made me want to talk to you all about nursing burnout was I was scrolling on Facebook and I happened to see a post. So I'm on Facebook. I'm part of this group called, I think it's like Travel Nurse Network. And I actually joined the group when I was a traveler in California. When I was doing traveling nursing, I was ending my contract, and that's when the pandemic happened. So my contract ended like March 14th or March 16th or something like that. And so the pandemic happened early March. And I remember it was another traveler, and she was like, girl, you've got to get on these Facebook groups. They're having like all these jobs. They're posting all these jobs, and they're offering like this insane amount of money for you to go travel because of the pandemic. So of course I've just stuck with the group. I haven't removed myself or anything, because they actually really do have some interesting information and some tips, and it's almost just kind of become an outlet too for nurses. And so somebody posted that, and I wish I could find it, but now it's buried deep. But she was just basically saying, like, I really hate to say this, and I hope nobody judges me, but I hate nursing. Like, I hate nursing. I'm burnt out. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've been working in the hospital. And she's actually a traveler. She was a traveler. And she said that she had started pretty much right after she had gotten out of nursing school, which is really kind of unheard of. But just basically like venting about how much she hates nursing. And just how she was burned out and everything. And so I went to the comments, because I was like, I wonder what are people gonna say. And I really kind of thought people were gonna bash her for being honest and saying what she was saying. But it was so many people that agreed with her, and they were like, you know what? I'm burnt out too. Like, I'm starting to hate nursing. It was one woman that said, I've been a nurse for 27 years. I actually love nursing. But I have 2 daughters, and they're getting ready to come out. They're getting ready to go into college. And I told them, whatever you do not be a nurse. And so I'm reading this, and it's hitting hard for me, because I'm like, man, like, I just have not seen that amount of honesty when it comes to nursing in so long. But I think the pandemic is kind of bringing it out of people. So I just kind of wanted to say what I think about it, and hopefully it will be helpful to you if you are just starting your career, if you're feeling the same way, if you're feeling like you're burnt out. Just hopefully it can just help you to see that you're not alone. And I think that was the great thing about her posting that, is that she was able to see that she's not alone, because nobody made her feel bad about how she felt, or nobody bashed her for saying it. People were really supportive. So I started my career in the hospital, and it was really what I always wanted to do, because I knew I wanted to be well-rounded. I knew I always wanted to know a little bit about everything. And working in a hospital really does give you that opportunity, especially working in med surg. So even though my floor was a specialty floor, we like specialized in GI, women's health, and surgeries just in general, of course. And it was something else that we specialized in, but we would also just get an overflow of a lot of things. So I knew a little bit about everything, but and that was what I wanted. So so that's why I chose the hospital. And I always told myself, and I think I've said this in a previous video, I was like, you know what? I'm always going to work in the hospital. Like, I want to be a hospital nurse forever because I always want to know a little bit about everything. And then I knew like hospital nurses were hustling and bustling, and you know, as a dietitian, it was mainly like a desk job for me, and I hated sitting all day. I hated being at my desk for 8 hours a day. So I knew I kind of wanted to be moving, shaking, and interacting with people, and just kind of being that vibe that you get from working in the hospital. And so it just made sense for me to go work on a med surg floor because at that time I was like, I know I can't do like being in the, like when we had our critical care class, I was like, I can never do this. Like knowing pressors and the calculations and everything that we had to do, like that made it very intimidating, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway, so went to work in the med surg unit, and I just remember being so anxious to get started. Like, because we graduated in December, mid-December. I took my exam January 15th. I took my exam a month later, and then so I'm like, and I'd already had this job since October 2016. And I remember just like emailing and like just blowing up the supervisor's phone line because I'm just like, I'm ready to start. Like, when can I start? Like, and just giving her play-by-play details, like, okay, I take my test this day. You know, when I pass, okay, I pass. Like, I just was so anxious to get started because I wanted to get to the money, and two, I just was ready to like just be a nurse. And I remember her telling me like, you know, she was very patient with me and understanding, and of course she was ready for me to come as well. But I just remember, and I can't remember how she said it, but she was just like, listen, don't rush this. Like, just enjoy your time off, because you know I was in that transition from being off of school and getting ready to work. So she was just like, enjoy your time off, because you know once you start, that's when the real work is going to begin. And then so, you know, at that time it just went in one ear and out the other, because I'm like, okay, whatever, child, you know, I'm ready to get started, like let's do this. So I took my test mid-January, passed, and I started working. I started orientation January 31st, 2017 at the hospital. And so I think the orientation that we had to do with them was like maybe a week or a few days. And then I started working in the unit. And when I say y'all, it was like I've said in a video before, it's just so different from being in nursing school. Like, it was just such a culture shock. And I was just like, wow. And so made it through orientation. Orientation was 3 months and or 12 weeks. And then I was finally on my own, which is so scary. It was scary, but made it on my own. And so I remember I'd been working probably about 3 months on my own. So on the unit, a total of 6 months. And I remember I was in the medication room, and it was probably a few nurses in there. And I don't know what had happened. It was just a normal, typical, busy, crazy day. And I just looked to one of the nurses and I was like, I'm burnt out. Like, I just was being vulnerable and open and honest. Like, I don't really remember anything crazy happening that day. Like, I don't remember anybody coding, or I really just, I don't remember anything crazy happening. I just remember just walking in the room and being like, I'm burnt out. And the other nurse looked at me and she said, you've only been a nurse for 6 months. Like, you should not be burnt out. And so it almost just made me feel ashamed to even say that. Because she just made me feel bad and feel like I was crazy. But 6 months in, I was just burnt out. And I think a lot of it was because I had 6 patients. I had, at that time, 6 different family members to deal with, sometimes even more. All the doctors, you've got to learn the different doctors' personalities, trying to juggle knowing everything about 6 patients, what's going on with them. Like, and just think about that. Like, because a doctor will randomly come up to you, not as much in med surg as in the ICU, but you know, doctors randomly come up to you and want to know all this information. And just imagine having 6 people that you're responsible for, and you may or may not even really have had time to really delve into their chart, see what was going on with them. You may or may not have even got a good report on them, because obviously when you get there and you've got 6 patients, you got to hit the ground running. And so for us, our schedule was 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. So at 6:30 a.m., from really ideally from 6:30 to 7, you're supposed to be getting report. But say night shift had a crazy night and they're late getting your report. So maybe you all don't start getting report until 6:45. You've got 6 patients to get report on. So that could take anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 minutes. Especially if something happens and they need to be turned, or they have an accident, or just anything with that. So you're getting report from 6:30 to 7. If you got one and so ideally, like, then you start getting into their chart, seeing what's going on with them. But say one of them hits their call light, the other nurse is gone, the aide is maybe tied up, now you have to go see about them, and you end up being in there for 10-15 minutes. So now it's 7:15, 7:30, and now it's time to start assessing, because at 9 o'clock you're gonna have to start giving meds. So and that's what was really a challenge for me, because it's just like time management, and that's what really makes or breaks a lot of people, is time management. And I'm not gonna lie, I was awful at time management, because I'm the type that I want to look through your chart, I want to see everything that's going on with you, I want to know your labs, I want to have a little bit of conversation with you, I want to help you, I want to I just like to parlay and talk to my patients, and check on you, see how you're doing, see what's going on, how you're feeling. But that's not always realistic. And even though you may come into the profession being that way and wanting to do that for your patients, really the nursing culture kind of changes that, and you become so task oriented, and it's like you almost become a robot, like you don't even really want to open the window of being personable and being too chatty and too talky, because it's like, okay, I got 5 other patients, like I can't stay in here and I can't speak with you. But and then the other thing with that is, when you're in one room, because obviously if you got 6 patients, like, you can't know what's going on with them at all times. And especially the way that a med surge floor is, because they're all spread out, there's no way to see what's going on in one room while you're in the other room. And so that was always my fear, that while I'm in one room tending to a patient, the other one's in there dying, because they're not hooked up to any monitors that are on our med surge floor. They weren't, because typically you're stable when you're in the ICU, when you're on a med surge floor. So it does kind of I really, it's so much more to that, but basically just the humdrum: 6 patients, trying to make sure they're okay, 6 doctors, six patients with tons of different doctors, 6 patients with tons of different family members that want updates every so often, that want it just really became demanding. And so 6 months in, as a brand new baby nurse, I just was like, I'm burnt out. And so and like I said, she just really made me feel bad about it, because she was right. I'm 6 months in and I'm already feeling like this. So 10 months. So I worked there for almost a year. And like I said in another video, I had a friend that worked in the ICU. He was like, come down there. I went down there, and things were a lot better there for a little while. They were so much better. Like, at that time, I only had 2 patients, and I had a great preceptor. And that's another thing, which I probably need to do another video about that, about if you ever are called upon to be a good preceptor, just some do's and don'ts and some things that you need to do, because I had an awful preceptor in my med surge on my med surge floor. And not awful in the sense of she was a bad nurse, but she was just so mean to me, so impatient, just acted like she didn't want me around. And then the crazy, so I was able to speak up. because what happened was she called out one day, and I had to go shadow another nurse, and the other nurse was amazing. Matter of fact, we're still friends to this day. She was hard on me, but she was amazing. And so I ended up speaking up and asking the supervisor if she could be my preceptor, because she was just so much more patient with me, so much, just so much better. And then the preceptor that was mad with and that was so mean to me, she was acting like she was just so hurt that I switched preceptors. And I'm like, girl, I mean, you treat me like crap. Like, why do you think I want to stay? Like, I don't even feel comfortable asking you questions. Like, that's how bad it was. So, anyway, so that's a whole nother topic. And that's what I said too about just the culture of nursing. Like, sometimes we are just so mean to each other, and we're just so mean. And because it's like at some point you were a new nurse, like, but then too, in a way I get it, because you are so busy, like, you are so busy, and you're trying to get these patients taken care of, and having somebody with you does slow you down. It really does. But it just kind of makes me change the way I feel about when I have students now, when I'm a preceptor. Even when I was a preceptor in the hospital, and even now in my current job, it just kind of makes me want to do better and be better and go the extra mile to to be a good one, because I know I've had some bad ones, and especially that experience. That was a really bad experience. But anyway, now I kind of lost my train of thought. But it got a little bit better with med surge, because I had two patients, had a great preceptor. And that's easier to know. Like, it's easier to kind of, even though they're sicker down there, like, it was just easier to keep up with two patients. And then it was kind of limited with family, because you could only have so much family down there, and it just was a different atmosphere. And so I kind of got my happiness back, my zeal to want to come to work, because kind of once I got into that slump of feeling burnt out, like, I just was not the same person. Like, I was not excited about coming to work. I dreaded coming to work. I wouldn't pick up any extra shifts. Just my whole demeanor and attitude changed. And then it was some other stuff, because we had to work every other weekend. I was a newbie, so I was working all the holidays. So it just really changed me. And so then, like I said, when I went down to ICU, that just kind of rejuvenated me. I just had a different sense of energy down there. So got off orientation, went to night shift, because that's at the time all new nurses had to go to night shift, and loved night shift. Night shift was amazing. Then I went to day shift, and day shift was great too, because now, in the sense of money, it was not, because I took a pay cut, but it was just more experienced nurses on day shift. And they were helpful. Like, day shift was great too, but then we kind of got into a slump where we didn't have as many, like, our staffing. So people were quitting, and that put a strain on us, because we weren't getting a lot of float nurses coming over. So it was very stressful, because then that's when they started tripling us. So we would have 3 patients, and you would have 3 sick patients, even though they would try to, like, balance it to where they would give you one that was kind of sick, and then your other 2 not as sick. As you know, things can change. Like, you can go from being fine to being a cardiac arrest. So, and that's a lot of times how it would be. Like, you would get 3, and you'd be struggling all day long, and you may or may not have an aide that day. And it just was kind of some other things too that kind of had changed, and I really can't think of them now at the top of my head. But I just remember, like, I had that burnt out feeling again. Like, I was probably down there a year but so it was a little different than med surge, because I started getting burnt out 6 months in with med surge. But then with ICU, it was about a year. I was a year in, and I was like, I just remember looking at my best friend here, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So I started looking for other jobs, and it might have been a little bit over a year, because 2019, no, it was probably about a year, a little over a year. So 2019, I started looking for new jobs. and started and looking for, and then I really was considering traveling. I was considering being a doctor's nurse, working in a clinic. Really, I just wanted to do anything at that point. And so I ended up getting a job as a doctor's nurse. Well, I actually interviewed, I had several different interviews. Like I interviewed at one of the urology clinics here in Little Rock. I actually got that job, but then I got a call that I had gotten the job as that they wanted to interview me as a doctor's nurse at a cardiology clinic, which made the most sense to me because I'm like, I work in a cardiac ICU, you know, that he would be working in the unit. Like the clinic was in the same hospital. He would be working in the unit. So I knew the type of patients that we would be getting. I probably knew most of them or a lot of them. So it like for me that just made the most sense. So I didn't take the job at the urology clinic and interview with him at the cardiology clinic. But then I'd applied to another job with the State Department, and that was kind of up my alley too because it was going to be like a special program. Like I was going to be like one of the directors for a special program, and I was going to be dang, now I can't even think of really what I was going to be doing, but it kind of fit with my like nutrition background and different things. So I was like, oh, that would be the perfect fit. So I turned down that other job because I was in the top running to get this job, but then everything backfired, and I ended up not getting that job. I ended up, even though I was in the top two, they ended up giving it to somebody else, and so I was without a job because I had turned down the other two jobs, and they were boiling hot at me for turning it down, the cardiology job, and then they ended up not hiring me there. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm stuck here. I was like, I guess I'm back at square one. And, you know, I'm burnt out. I'm not happy. But, and so then that's when I ended up doing traveling. And that's a whole nother video. Even though I did enjoy traveling, it was a good experience. But that is, I think, another topic that I should talk to you all about. Because I do think that if you're able, like especially if you're single, no kids, and you can pack up and leave for a few months, I think you definitely should do travel. I just have a few things that I just kind of wanted to talk about with that. But anyway, so I just kind of wanted to, so I guess long story short, 22 minutes in, I was so burnt out. So traveling was a nice experience, but it was the same thing. Like it was the same thing. And even though, because I went to California, and even though in California, like they take care of their nurses. Like you're going to get a 30-minute lunch break. You're going to get two 15-minute breaks. You're going to always have two patients. If you work in the ICU, if you're on the med surg floor, you're always going to have 4 patients. They don't play about those patient-nurse ratios. Now, I don't know what the pandemic, if that changed, but prior to the pandemic, like, they did not play about those patient-nurse ratios. And so they took good care of you as a nurse under the union, but it was still the same old. And especially as a traveler, like, because they feel like you making all this money, like, you gonna get these hard patients. Like, we gonna make sure you work for your money. So, but I loved my staff. Like I loved everybody I worked with, just about, you know, you always gonna have somebody that don't like you for whatever reason. But overall it was a good experience. But like I said, it was the same old. So I completely got out of bedside, and I told myself probably the other day, probably like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm never going back to bedside. If I don't have to, like, you know, because you never know where life will take you, because who knows, like when I get married and have kids, like that may be the best option, because, you know, you can do PRN and maybe work 1 shift a week or do something like that. But I told myself, I was like, if I don't have to, like, I'm probably never going to go back to bedside. And so after the pandemic, I came home after my travel nurse assignment in March, and I was actually supposed to be a school nurse as a sub school nurse. I had already, like in February, I had lined up the job so that when I came back, like that's what I would be doing full time. I would be a sub nurse. And because I didn't want to go back to bedside, so that was just going to be until I could get a permanent position, because at the time they didn't have an opening. And then of course school shut down, so I literally did not work for, I didn't do anything, because even when I tried to get back at the hospital, they weren't, I tried to get back online at the hospital and they wouldn't hire me. They like, and I think I just tried to get on PRN, because then I ended up oh yeah. I tried to get on PRN only because I ended up finding a job as a school nurse where I am now, but in May, early May. But of course, that job didn't start until August. So I was trying to get on work PRN at the hospital so that I could, just have something to keep me busy until then. And I knew, and I could do that, but they didn't hire me. And really they didn't hire me until September, when I started my other job. So I did PRN there for a while. But even with that, like, I was working 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, when school finally did start. And then I would go to the hospital on Saturday, work a 12-hour shift. So I only have one day off, Sunday. And then even just with being out of the game for so long, going from March to September without working at the bedside, like, I was rusty. I was very rusty. And and then I remember it was one time I came in and I had like, I mean, it was a complex patient, but it wasn't like the most complex, but he was like a post cabbage. And mind you, and I was in like the cardiovascular ICU, because normally I work in the coronary care unit where you have like not the minor cardiac things, but it's not in my hospital that I was working at, it's not as major as the CV ICU. We were the CCU. So I got pulled to the CVICU where like they do the transplants and cabbages and stuff. So I had gotten a cabbage post day. I think he was like on his third day. He had a swan. He had all this stuff going on. I'm like, I'm a school nurse. Like, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just had so much anxiety, because I just was like, I'm a school nurse now. Like, I was like, I handle asthma and diabetes now. I'm like, I don't know what in the world I'm doing. But so I eventually ended up letting my PRN at the hospital go, because I just was like, I just don't even feel safe. Like, and thank God though, nobody died in my care. I took very good care of my patients. I asked for help. I was out. Now I ain't gonna let you die. I'm gonna ask for some help before something bad happens. Or throughout my shift, I wore them down too. I'm like, hold on, I need help with this. Like, how does this work again? Like, I'm smart, but I'm going to ask for help. But it did get to the point where I just was like, I need to be in one or the other. Like, I need to do school nursing full time, or I need to do the hospital full time. But now that I was able to do both, and just even being in it, I'm just like, I'll never, if I have anything to do with it, I won't go back to the hospital. And if I do, like, it would be like a shift once a week, if that. But it's hard. Hospital nursing is hard. Hospital nursing will burn you out. And I think you just have to take care of yourself. And I think you have to also be honest with yourself. And if you are feeling burnt out, and if you are just to that point, and I think if you are feeling burnt out, you have to acknowledge it and not be afraid to make and I think, not be afraid to make a decision. Like, okay, I'm burnt out. Where am I going to go from here? Like, do I need to transfer to another department? Do I need to find a whole nother job in general? Because I think what a lot of times happens is nurses get burnt out, and then they just get nasty and mean, and they have a nasty attitude, a nasty spirit. They don't want to help anybody. They don't want to train anybody. When you become a preceptor, you're just so mean and ugly to the person that you're training with. And so I think you really just do have to be honest with yourself. And even and a lot of people don't want to leave the hospital though, because of the money, because I made the best money of my life working in a hospital, being a travel nurse. And when you do go into a clinic, when you do go into school nursing, you are going to take a pay cut. But if it's going to be better for your well-being, if you're going to be a pleasant person, if you're going to be a nicer person, if you're going to be a happier person, then sometimes that's what is it's going to be worth taking a pay cut. And matter of fact, that made me think about, in the comment section, one of the nurses put, I'm burnt out as well. I come home and my husband says, I am just so mean and so this and that. And she says, I know it's because of my job. And y'all, I love being a nurse. I love being a nurse. Like, I just get emotional thinking about it sometimes, because I'm just like, I was made for this. Like, I was made to be a nurse, y'all. Like, I love it, but it wears you down. Taking care of people, especially in their most sickest and vulnerable moments, and then dealing with family members and dealing with doctors and dealing with other coworkers and just all these different spirits and attitudes, it wears you down, y'all. Like, I just cannot emphasize, like, it wears you down, and it can just make you question everything. But I just think you really do have to be honest with yourself, have to not be afraid to take some pay cuts and make some changes in your life, because they're gonna be fine without you. Like, they're gonna find somebody else to carry on the torch for you. But your family can't necessarily say that. Your family can't necessarily carry the torch, and it's not fair to them too, that you come home with a nasty bad attitude all the time, or it's just not fair, and it's not right. So I think you really do have to be honest with yourself, have to acknowledge that you're burnt out, and just really sit down with yourself and say, okay, where do I go from here? Do I need to go part-time? Do I need to just find another job in general? Like, do I need to move to another department? I will say, with school nursing, it has been better for me mentally. It's still stressful within itself. And I guess that's a whole nother video, because now we're at 31 minutes, but I do have more peace of mind. I think I am happier. I'm more at peace now. This is COVID season right now, so I didn't have all my kids there. I don't know if I'll say the same thing. If I'll say the same thing this time next year about that, but for now, it's a good fit. For now, I'm happy, and but I don't necessarily see myself there for 20-30 years, and that's just being honest and real. Just because it is stressful within its own self. It is stressful dealing with parents. It's stressful dealing with and dealing, like, not like being on the, because when you work in a hospital, you're kind of in your own world. Like, you always have a vital machine going. You always know somebody's vitals. You have a history. You if somebody codes, you have a team that knows what to do. And when you're as a school nurse, or kind of when you're outside of a clinic, or in the real world, like, you don't have those things. You don't have people around you that know what to do if somebody codes. You don't know, people around you don't know what to do if someone's having an asthma attack. Like, and even sometimes you're limited with the resources that you have, because pretty much all I have in my arsenal bag is a blood pressure cuff. If the kid brings emergency medicine, their emergency inhaler, their epi, and Narcan. But pretty much that's my weapons: Narcan, epi, albuterol if the child brings one, and a blood pressure cuff and a pulse ox. So of course, if somebody, there's only so much you can do. So we always, if there's a medical emergency, we have to call the ambulance. So, and then that's even just a lot within itself, because we don't have we have to wait. The fire department and the ambulance, you're going to be waiting for a minute. It's not going to be 3 or 4 minutes when they get there. So, but anyway, so just my thoughts about burnout. It is real. Nursing burnout is real. And just make sure that you take care of yourself, and that you just are always kind of doing an inventory of your feelings, and just remember why you got in the profession. And just remember that too, at the end of the day, like, why did I want to be a nurse? And just always kind of go back to that too. So hopefully this helps. I really didn't mean for it to be 34 minutes. I really thought that this was going to be like a 10-minute video, but I just kept running my mouth. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.